online, on the TuneIn app,
and on your smart speaker.
Play Shock Radio.
This is the sound of Salford.
Shock Radio News.
Good evening. The top stories at 7 o'clock this evening. The Chancellor's insisted that their plans for a third runway at Heathrow are in line with the government's environmental and climate objectives. Rachel Reeves said expansion at the airport is badly needed in a major speech about growth. Protesters have twice interrupted the confirmation of Donald Trump's pick for US Health Secretary. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been accused by Democratic Senator of embracing conspiracy theories, quacks and charlatans when it comes to vaccines. He denies being an anti-vaxxer. Former Love Island winner Jack Fincham's been released on bail after being jailed for his dog biting a runner. He's lodged an appeal after pleading guilty to 2 counts of being in charge of a dangerously out-of-control animal. Tesco's to cut around 400 jobs as part of plans to simplify the business. The UK's largest supermarket chain says managers at its head office, mobile phone shops, as well as staff at some of its in-store bakeries will be affected. Buckingham Palace says the King and Queen are delighted at the news that Princess Beatrice has given birth to a baby girl. Athena was born a week ago and is the late Queen's granddaughter's second child.
Shock Radio weather.
In weather, dry through Wednesday evening with lengthy clear spells overnight. Colder than of late with areas of frost and the odd mist of fog or fog patch developing by the morning. Lows of 1 degrees for Manchester. Well, good evening and welcome to the Shock News Show. I'm Oliver Sykes and alongside me this evening are Alfie Mulcahy and Sam Stimpson. Over the next half an hour, we have a deeper look into the headlines currently in the news. Well, good evening to you both. How are you?
I'm good. You, Ollie?
Yes, not too bad. Glad to have you here. Sorry, Samantha, I should have I should have picked up on that. Well, there was a big speech this morning by Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor. She set out plans to go further and faster than previous governments to deliver growth, and one of these items is going to be the extension of a third runway at Heathrow. Guys, what can you tell me about this?
Well, it's something that's been discussed for years now, since Boris Johnson was mayor, and even before that as well. It comes mainly lots of noise complaints around Heathrow already from local residents, and a third runway would add to that. It would also mean moving a lot of infrastructure. You've got a dual carriageway that goes right through there that'll need to be buried and have a big tunnel in order to make room for the runway, and that'll be the residents will be affected because some homes, some gardens will have to move to make way for this third runway.
Yeah, and it's not just the local residents who are against all the expansion or the proposed expansion. There are people that don't want the government spending so much money. People are predicting, 6 million or 6 billion. I think it's to be spent on this expansion, as well as wildlife protesters not wanting. Well, one thing Reeves mentioned this morning was that people won't have to worry about the bats, and there was some other wildlife she mentioned, but wildlife protesters have said that people should be worrying about these and not focusing on on growing the economy over the environment.
Yeah, well, she said it's badly needed, and she wants to connect the UK to the world and open up more opportunities for growth. She accepts this is a start of a long process, but is fully committed to making the change. So we'll listen to it now. Oh, 1 second.
The hub airport, Heathrow, is in a unique position, and we cannot duck the decision any longer.
So there you go. She's proving here that she is committed to making a change. One thing I want to pick up on is HS2. Obviously, we saw that being completely... Well, it hasn't completely stopped, but being delivered all the way here in Manchester. That was scrapped. That was October, November time last year. Do you think we're going to see this fully delivered? How's it going to pan out, do you think?
Well, there's been some argument for quite some time that the third runway at Heathrow shouldn't go ahead, but instead more money should be put into rail services, because a lot of the flights that leave from Heathrow are internal. They're going up to Manchester, to Glasgow, to Edinburgh, other UK airports. If they put more money into the railways and had a commuter infrastructure that would work a lot better than it does currently, have a wider capacity in a slower amount of time, the argument goes that you could have fewer domestic flights from Heathrow, meaning that they could fulfill a greater demand for international flights while keeping the capacity of the airport itself the same. I think today's announcement sort of goes some way to prove that the financial direction is still air travel.
Going a little bit off track here, have any of you either flown in or out of Heathrow?
Yeah, several times.
I've only been once, but it seems like a very convenient one. But when it comes to construction, like we can go through Manchester and see the MRI hospital, the construction that's going on there, that's causing disruption there. So how long will this take? Will there be disruption caused to passengers in order to, increase the amount of passengers?
Yeah, I mean, I fly from Manchester fairly regularly, and I have flown to Gatwick. I can't remember if I'm not sure that I've ever flown to Heathrow, but I'm doing regular trips because I'm an Isle of Man resident. So it's a, what is the phrase? It's a domestic flight rather than
an international flight.
Yes, so used to that sort of airport experience. This is going to affect people in the surrounding area. A lot of people already probably aren't a fan of, like you mentioned before, noise. Surely there's going to be having to build more infrastructure in the surrounding area, more car parks. It's not just a runway. It's infrastructure surrounding that. It's train lines into an airport. It's car parks as well. It's
hotels.
When I'm flying into Manchester Airport, you look around and it's car parks, long stay, short stay. It's not just the runway itself.
I think the argument that would be made by the government, by the GLA and other people proposing this, is that in recent years you've now got the Elizabeth line going down to Heathrow. You've got the Heathrow Express, and it's obviously on the tube as well. It's well served by London public transport, so I think their response to that would be, people don't have to drive. We don't have to build more car parks. There's this big infrastructure by rail bringing people to the airport already.
But if they increase the amount of passengers, then you'll need to increase the amount of rail services available. So it could just lead to more infrastructure.
But at the moment, the rail services going down to Heathrow, they're not full. They've multiplied them in recent years, perhaps in anticipation for this plan to go through, because it has been in the pipeline for a while.
Can I just add to something you just said,
Go for
Alfie?
it.
So another reason they will be, encouraging this and encouraging support is the employability rating for it. Like, this is going to create so many more jobs in so many aspects of it. Yeah. And
if they want growth, which is their number one priority as a government, as they've said. But this has been on the cards for a long, long time. 2009, it was first proposed by Gordon Brown's Labour government, but was only given the go-ahead by the Supreme Court in 2020. Funny enough, Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, voted against a Heathrow expansion when in opposition. So that's interesting. Do you reckon there's been surrounding voices saying this is what, if you're so for growth, this is what's got to be done? Well,
and I think you have to remember that the government isn't a one-man team. It isn't just Keir Starmer making these decisions. He's got a cabinet around him. He's got the civil service around him to help make these decisions. He's not taking every decision personally and going, I disagree with this, I agree with this. There is that team making these big decisions.
Well, let's go to costs, because everyone wants to know, as a taxpayer, with these grand big projects that government want to take on, how much is this going to cost us? Well, the cost of the original plans for Heathrow development is estimated at £14 billion, but this is obviously going to be revised. This won't be the total cost, but with the likes of inflation and other things that may come along the way when they dig up the ground, things often become more expensive.
And compensation to move locals as well. There's going to be certain residents that don't want to move.
But it has been on the talks for a while, so if you were really quite concerned, perhaps you would have maybe thought, I think I'll pack up my bags and leave this area, because undoubtedly in the future there may be a runway at some point. Is there anything else you guys want to touch on first before we move on to listen to our next clip?
Well, I think we've heard a lot from environmental protesters. We've heard a lot from local residents very much against this. But there have been lots of business groups come out massively in favour for this expansion, and it would allow far more people to use the economy around Heathrow. I saw a map on X earlier on today that was a map of a lovely chloropleth map of income and how thriving the local economies across London are. And you've got this big patch of high earning, high turnover area in the centre of London. And then Heathrow is this other big hotspot for businesses earning money. So it's bringing more money into that local economy, and hopefully will help spread to the areas immediately around Heathrow, and help bring this community up even more than it has already.
So, as we mentioned before, we're talking Heathrow this evening on the Shock Radio News Show. Rachel Reeves is aiming to make Britain the world's best connected place to do business, and she says she will fight to boost the economy.
For too long, we have accepted low expectations and accepted decline. We no longer have to do that. We can do so much better. Low growth is not our destiny.
She set this out earlier today in a speech to business leaders. She also backed expansions at Luton and Gatwick airports, as well as a growth corridor between Oxford and Cambridge, which she claimed could be Europe's Silicon Valley. She described the UK as a country of huge potential, which had been held back for too long. Obviously, there's going to be some opposition to this, and we know that Kemi Badenoch has spoken out about this. Should we hear from her, or is there anything else you want to interject with first?
Well, something that always happens when arguments like this come up. So the third runway at Heathrow was proposed under the Conservative government over the last couple of years, and now they're out of office and it's someone else putting the plans forwards. They have to be seen to be opposing it, even though lots of Conservatives were very much in favour of this 2-3 years ago.
Interesting, isn't it? I mean, economic growth is something that they both sort of portray as a big factor for them but obviously, as we've seen, growth has been up and down at the moment. They're trying to get it back up. Well, we'll hear from Kemi Badenoch now. She complained the speech has outlined a little new material, and saying that the plans have mostly been stolen from I believe her party. So let's hear from her.
All his ideas are the ones that we thought of. He needs to make sure that we deliver for growth now as well as the future.
Well, there we have it. Other people that have spoken out as well. Ed Miliband, who is the current Energy Secretary, saying any aviation expansion will only be able to go ahead if it is consistent with our carbon budgets. Again, it's interesting, isn't it? More flying. And you'd think that we've come through a period of where we've done so much online connectivity. You'd think, but clearly going to do business in person is a way forward. Is this not something that should we not be really considering lowering our emissions, not opening up and having more flights across the world?
I suppose you could make the argument that the increased capacity at Heathrow might not lead to more air flights in total, but might just move people away from using London Ashford, London Stansted and Gatwick, which are further away from the capital, which would then mean less travelling from the airports into the centre. But there's also this classic argument of build it and they will come. More lanes of a motorway doesn't mean less traffic, it means more cars. So that's two very different ways of looking at the expansion from an environmental point of view. On the one hand, it's moving people closer to London and moving planes away from further out places, but also it might just lead to more flights in total.
It's interesting that at the start of Rachel Reeves' time in office, she said she pledged to be the first Green Chancellor, and this pretty much contradicts it, prioritising business over the environment. That's one stance you could see it as, but then it could bring in more business that could eventually benefit. And at the current state, what people care most about for the government is the economy. So if this government is promising something that's going to benefit eventually people as well as businesses, it might be a little bit better than she originally comes off as.
I mean, the CEO, Thomas Woolby of CEO of Heathrow, has said that it's going to take time to make a plan reality. Are we going to realistically, this could be 10, 15 years before we see something maybe actually fully complete? I don't know, I could be seeing way too far into the distance, but we might not be seeing spades in the ground for a while, which perhaps Rachel Reeves is maybe seeing these plans as, saying that she supports this, and that is it really going to actually boost this Labour government's economic growth right here, right now? And Sadiq Khan is against the idea of this third runway because of the impact it'll have on noise, air pollution, and meeting climate change targets. Well, an airline that doesn't actually fly out of Heathrow is Ryanair, and the big boss, Michael O'Leary, says the Chancellor should scrap air passenger duty rather than waffle on about expanding Heathrow. He described the announcement as a dead cat that wouldn't happen till the 1940s, the 2040s. We'll hear from Michael O'Leary now.
What's holding back the growth is Rachel Reeves increasing APD, travel taxes on airfares. It's a tax rate of 33%. She should abolish it and then stand back and watch the airlines deliver record growth, not in 2030 or 2040 or 2050, but this year, next year and the year after.
Well, there we have it from Michael O'Leary there. Well, before we move on to our next topic this evening, is there anything further you two would like to add on the topic of the Heathrow runway expansion?
I think it'll be interesting to see how long this does take, because we mentioned HS2 earlier. That's taken way longer than was originally forecast and has been cut back since that point. We've seen infrastructure project after infrastructure project fail to either meet its target on time or its target on size. So it'll be really interesting to see whether they can pull this off and how quickly they can, especially considering carbon targets might change by the time the project is completed.
And it'll be interesting to see whether any of these infrastructure projects will move out of London. A lot of people, up north and in the Midlands, they don't see as much infrastructure growth as they perhaps see as happening in London.
Well, thank you for both your contributions so far. A simple blood test that could revolutionise dementia diagnosis has started trials in NHS clinics. The study of more than 3,000 patients will verify a diagnostic test suitable for routine use that can detect problems with memory and mental processing at an early age. So this is interesting news, isn't it, guys? Perhaps a real sort of step forward in being able to sort of diagnose dementia earlier.
Yeah, 10 million people are diagnosed every year, and when it comes to diagnosis, only a small percentage, about 2%, can go through with getting all the scans necessarily done to be diagnosed with eventually Alzheimer's, perhaps. So having a shorter route would help not only the patient, but it would help the families as well. Alzheimer's and dementia don't just affect the individuals, they require care systems, and there'll be so many people directly and indirectly affected by this.
Alfie, do you have any thoughts?
Well, it's something that's been the research for this has been ongoing for years, and a lot of money has been pumped into finding better ways to deal with Alzheimer's, to find it quicker, to find some way of mitigating its effect on a person, and any thing that pushes closer to better understanding it is brilliant.
Definitely. Well, 2% of people with Alzheimer's disease have a proper diagnosis because the NHS does not have enough specialised PET, position emission tomography, brain scanners, or trained staff to take a sample of fluid from the spine. So, it's definitely an interesting one. Professor Vanessa Raymond, who's leading the study, says the check could also improve the growing number of treatments available. We'll hear from her now.
Now, those drugs are suitable for people who have fairly early levels of memory impairment, so we need to get the diagnosis right to see if people are eligible and will benefit from those drugs.
I mean, it's really interesting how quickly we can move ahead with being able to improve people's lives, being able to find out things quicker, and being able to deal with things a lot quicker, because again, uncertainty is a major thing with health, and when we're not quite sure what someone may be being diagnosed with, sometimes things can take a while. But with all this work that the incredible NHS does, we can hopefully be able to deal with things a lot quicker.
Yeah, this news is definitely a lot of security for people struggling with health anxiety. So even if you know someone who you think could potentially be diagnosed with dementia, then this is going to be a bit of a comfort blanket, knowing that in a few years' time, potentially there would be a chance that they could receive help sooner than they originally could. And like you said, the rate that medication and that technology advances in the medical field, people are going to be able to receive diagnosis and likelihoods of diagnosis sooner than before.
Yeah. Well, we're going to move on now to some news from the entertainment world, and it's that Wyn Evans, the Go Compare star that you may recognise from TV screens, the opera singer with the moustache that's sort of what was it?
You should have brought one with you, Ollie.
I should have. What do you call that when it's
handlebar moustache?
Yes. Yeah. Obviously appeared on the 20th series of Strictly Come Dancing in 2024. Strictly Come Dancing now on a live tour around the UK. He also is a BBC Radio Wales presenter. Recently, I think within the past sort of month, he's made inappropriate comments whilst on live tour about the Strictly It Takes Two presenter Jeanette Manrara, and he has now stepped away from the show. BBC producers of the show have said that they don't tolerate such behaviour. Katya Jones sided with Evans and is said to be loving and considerate. So it's an interesting one about behaviour, and again, the BBC. So any thoughts on this, guys?
Well, on the live show itself, there were concerns raised by viewers that he was potentially getting a bit too close to some other contestants. That was never confirmed, but now we're seeing some other things have happened on the tour, which is not operated directly by the BBC. It's operated by an external company with licensing for the BBC name. But many people go into Strictly and they get a career boost from it. But this situation seems to be he's gone in with a lot of public affection for him and has ended up losing it over the last few months.
And wasn't it him that during the live shows there was the incident with him moving his hand while the camera was
I believe with his
there.
partner Katya Jones.
So I found it quite interesting that she's been telling fans to be loving and considerate towards him.
I believe she shut down those comments when it was when that that was sort of made a thing of by the press, that it was to do with an internal joke between the two of them. But obviously, things have clearly now. He said something to another female member of the Strictly world, I think when they were appearing for a photograph.
It was like 16th of January,
yeah,
so just
yeah.
at the start of the launch. It was the launch event, not even the tour.
But it's in recent days that he stepped away from his BBC Radio Wales show and, of course, the Strictly Live tour. Well, we're going to move on now to looking at Greater Manchester news. And tonight a fire broke out at the Etihad Stadium just a couple of hours before the Champions League match against Club Brugge, I think it may be pronounced.
Bruges, I think.
Bruges. It's always a big thing when there's international sort of tournament games, leagues, that we expect to see big amounts of fans come into an area. I'm not saying that was perhaps related to this evening. I don't know the cause. It could be completely unrelated, but it has been. It was a merchandise stand that caught fire, and it has been extinguished. The safety of all attending tonight is a top priority, but often when it comes to big games, you see what are they called? Lighter things being thrown and etc. Damages to club buses at times. It can be scary for fans, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But as yet, we obviously don't know what caused this fire. It may have been something simple as an electrical fault, or there may have been some foul play involved. There was meant to be a welcome event tonight, and that's been cancelled because of this. But the players are at the stadium now. They just missed out on this original welcome event.
Right. So yes, if you're joining us this evening, there was a fire by the Etihad Stadium ahead of their Manchester City's Champions League match this evening. Well, a bit closer to home in Salford, the sad news that the Sevens Brother Brewery will be closing. It's going to be sad news, really, for locals and obviously the hospitality industry itself.
Yeah, I mean, they've had issues with... They were going to close in 2019, so that was before the pandemic, when businesses, especially local businesses, did start to suffer. But they managed to stay open for 5 years. So they were open from 2014, and they've managed to do just about another 5, which they didn't expect. But I think the Seven Brothers have got a real, cherished part of Salford, because they are literally 7 brothers. So it's a bit more of a unusual story. It does, capture, especially, locals' hearts, knowing that this is happening in their area, and it's such a notable and important brand that they've done fundraising with their cans. So yeah.
So just after 10 years of being open, they were left with no choice to close down one of their most popular beer houses. The Salford-based beer brewery started its life in 2014, and it's going to close down its Middlewood Lock site, which is actually only been going for 5 years in operation, but obviously the business longer. Well, thank you both for joining me this evening on the Shock Radio News Show. Big thank you to Luke Jones, this evening's producer, and Alfie Garner on the vision mixer and production side of things. Thank you both for joining me. We're now going to take a look at recapping this evening's main headlines. Well, you're joining me, Oliver Sykes. It's just been the Shock Radio News Show, and these are your top stories this evening. The Chancellor's insisted that their plans for a third runway at Heathrow are in line with the government's environmental and climate objectives. Rachel Reeves said expansion at the airport is badly needed in a major speech about growth. Protesters have twice interrupted the confirmation of Donald Trump's pick for US Health Secretary. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has been accused by a Democratic senator of embracing conspiracy theories, quacks, and charlatans when it comes to vaccines. He denies being an anti-vaxxer. Former Love Island winner Jack Fincham's been released on bail after being jailed for his dog-biting a runner. He's lodged an appeal after pleading guilty to 2 counts of being in charge of a dangerously out-of-control animal. Tesco's to cut around 400 jobs as part of plans to simplify the business. The UK's largest supermarket chain says managers at its head office, mobile phone shops, as well as staff at some of its in-store bakeries will be affected. Buckingham Palace says the King and Queen are delighted at the news that Princess Beatrice has given birth to a baby girl. Athena was born a week ago and is the late Queen's granddaughter's second child. And Shock Radio weather this evening, dry through Wednesday evening with lengthy clear spells overnight, colder than of late with areas of frost and the odd mist or fog patch developing by morning. Lows of 1 degrees for Manchester. Well, thank you very much for listening this evening, and yes, take care and enjoy the rest of your night.